Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. I'm trying something a little bit different here by doing a live stream. Normally I script the videos and there's some production and that sort of thing, but some of these vids, even a 10-minute vid takes 6 to 8 hours, and so I thought I'll try some live streams where I'm just gonna talk and chat and make commentary on some various issues that are important to me, and I'm sure important to many, and important to you as well. Now, one of those is the title of this this essay, which is about the disappearing middle class in the West. Now, in 1970, the middle class could be described as being between, say, 65 to 75% of the working population, and this is pretty much anybody with a full-time job. Was middle class really back in the day. And so you're looking in say, the early 1970s as a case in point, that two people working in a supermarket as packing shelves or working on the cash register, the checkout, they could afford to buy a house back then and have children, have a car, go on vacation every year. So that was a sort of purchasing power that even a basic entry-level job in places like supermarkets and retail, or even factories, warehouses, those sorts of jobs, they could afford somebody at the lower end, but basically a middle-class lifestyle that's owning property and being able to have children and so on. It would take probably 1.5 to 2 incomes at that level to do it, but it could be done, and many people did it. Now, the purchasing power of somebody working those sort of jobs today, which is 40, 50 years on, is around 35 to 40% of what it was back in, say, the early 1970s, late 1960s time period. So that'll illustrate just how far things have changed in terms of purchasing power for the people at that bottom end. So in that purchasing power context, again, the capacity to buy property, run a motor vehicle, have a family, get married, that sort of thing, the amount of people that can fit into that category today in the West is less than 25% of the population, or the working population. So there's a lot fewer jobs now that pay the sort of money relative to cost of living that will allow or permit what we used to see as a middle class lifestyle, and that number's going down pretty quickly. And there are jobs even that 20 years ago that were paying a certain wage, certain income, certain compensation, and 20 years later those jobs are actually paying the absolute same amount, not even including sort of any inflation. If they were paying $100,000, for example, $100,000 in the year 2000, they're still paying $100,000 today. So even at that upper end of what we would have hitherto thought of as the middle class, even they're under a lot of pressure now. And most of the middle class people, certainly that I'm aware of, are relying very heavily on inheritance, and certainly 2 incomes, but relying on inheritance to be able to get ahead, or buy property, or live anything close to what we would have thought as a middle class lifestyle, say 20, 30 or more years ago. So that's one way that the middle class is declining and almost disappearing, I would say. The other method, and there are 3 or 4 primary ones, has been the divorce industry. And I know guys today who had very high incomes and for quite some time, but they're on their 3rd divorce, and you can say that they've made bad choices for partners, or whatever the case may be, but nonetheless they're down to maybe $50,000 or $100,000 of net worth, even though they've been making 3 or 4, 5, 6 times the average annual wage for 30 plus years. Because of the divorce industry, they're down almost on the bones of their ass, simply because of the whole divorce industry and the way it's structured and put together. And it's part of the globalist plan to destabilize the family. Attacking the family and undermining the family is always what authoritarian regimes do first off, because the family gets in the way of the level of control they need. But what the effect of this is, though, that many men now, and we're probably talking about a third, maybe more men than that, who've been financially ruined through divorce, who otherwise would have been doing very well in the middle class, but have now been knocked out of the middle class and have got almost nothing to show for those years of work. And that's got also a knock-on effect, that there are many fewer men now available as marriage partners that have the sort of income that could underwrite or sustain a family situation. So there are many fewer options now for young women coming through as to who they're going to marry, and the sort of prospects and possibilities financially and into the future that they're going to have. So there are fewer marriage partners there that can sustain that middle class lifestyle or have that sort of affluence or purchasing power. So this the marriage and a middle class marriage in particular was a way for social mobility, for people to move from the working class or the upper working class clearly into the centre of the middle class. So the effect of divorce, and bear in mind that this is a time when women were entering the workforce in large numbers and thus reducing wages. So the divorce industry was there to encourage that separation of the genders and to encourage gender warfare. And that's had its effect in terms of, as I say, reducing the amount of men who would otherwise have been quite solidly in that middle class framework. So we've got the issue there, of course, of women being moved into the workforce, which has come close to halving wages. Between 40 and 45% reduction in the purchasing power of wages, and downward pressure on wages has been achieved by moving women into the workforce. So in many cases now, it requires two people to work just to have the same purchasing power as one person did 40 years ago. But this has had an effect on, of course, the middle class, because then in turn, these women are having fewer children. And because of that, there's a smaller and shrinking middle class. Because the example that middle class parents give of diligence, hard work, conscientious, studying hard, doing the best you can, being reliable, being dependable, being honest, all these sorts of things, they're also under a lot of stress, because those sort of families are having fewer children or even no children at all, and that's having its knock-on effect as well in terms of the middle class. Similarly, wages have come under pressure generally, and particularly with the well-paid jobs, with the offshoring of say, computer programming jobs to the dirt poor economies, the basket case economies of say, India or Pakistan. And similarly, bringing in guest workers when they're not needed. They're simply being brought into the West to have downward pressure on wages. So these are the forces that are causing in combination and aggregation, are causing a reduction in the middle class. And this is having a huge effect on the West. The West has been a middle class society for probably since the 1880s, 1890s, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But the middle class have been the ones who are concerned about due legal process, honest courts, accountable government, a free and independent media. The middle class typically has been the champions of these, because the middle class comes into existence on the basis of merit. They're not aristocrats, or they're not born into great wealth. It's a merit basis. And once you remove the merit as a criteria, which definitely is happening in the West today, once you remove merit as a criteria, then you take away a lot of the support structures for that middle class of people who have achieved most of their accomplishments on the basis of merit alone. And when merit's been taken away, as it is quite savagely, I'd even say now, then that takes away that underwriting of the middle class. So I hope that encapsulates some of the key issues that are reducing and threatening and undermining and eradicating the middle class. Now, we've got, just as a final comment, I'll make a comment on cost of living. If we look at a house price, again, I'll use 1970 as a guide. Some of these houses have gone up in value a hundredfold since then. Now, we've seen the biggest inflation in housing prices that have been in the history of humankind. This is the biggest inflation in housing prices across the board. Houses even 20 years ago in the area that I'm in that could have been purchased for 75,000 and now going for 1.5 million. They'll give you an idea. It's in Sydney, Australia. That'll give you an idea of the increase in the cost of living. So it's far more expensive today to buy a house than it would be 30 or 40 years ago, or even 25 years ago for that matter. So it takes far more years of income. And in order to pay for that, purchase property, the only elasticity in the whole equation, middle class equation, is to have fewer children and postpone having children until later. So again, another indirect assault on the middle class. So let me know in the comments what you think of this new format. I might add a graphic into the thing, but at the moment it's almost like a radio show or something like that. But let me know what you think and see if you found this informative and helpful, and then I'll make any adjustments based on the suggestions that come in. So you've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.